Dear friends, this afternoon we gather to pay tribute to someone we all knew and loved. A friend, a colleague, a teacher, a coach, our inspiration, Matt Gavin. Matt was an outstanding model for the right way to live every day. Let each of us honor Matt by giving our solemn promise to do what is decent and right, to care for our family, friends, and students, to do the best that we could be. If we fulfill this promise, we cannot but nurture and care for those lives we touch. If we try to follow Matt's example, we cannot help but come from a place of love, courage, and selflessness. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a memorial that Matt would have loved. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. I would now like to introduce Richards alum and University of Chicago student. She's currently a freshman, Jasmine Ortega.
Good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Ortega, and I'm a graduate from Richards High School. I am currently a first-year student at the University of Chicago. I was fortunate to have Mr. Gavin as a teacher twice during my time at Richards High School. First, during my junior year, Mr. Gavin was my AP US history teacher. Then, I was blessed to be partnered with him again during my senior year when I was a senior leader in his freshman workroom. Experiencing Mr. Gavin's teaching style in two totally different environments was something that has stuck with me to this day. Mr. Gavin obviously taught us very much in the classroom about how to prepare for the AP exam and all about the history of our country, but he taught us so much more. His interactive teaching style was something that I'll remember for years to come. One activity that showcases this best was his reaction to a group project. Now, we didn't have very many in APUSH, so the fact that we did have one meant that it was kind of a big deal for the class to work together in groups to accomplish this task. Now, the day after we turned in the project, Mr. Gavin apologetically told us that the custodians had thrown them away because he had left them out and they had mistaken them for trash. Now, we all worked very hard on these, so we were terrified to hear that all our hard work was literally in the trash. Now, some of us had typed them so we could just print them out again, but other students had spent hours working on them and making posters, and there was no way to reproduce them without spending the same amount of time to reproduce the posters again. After watching us argue for about 10 minutes, both at him and in our groups, Mr. Gavin ended the discussion telling us that it was an April Fool's joke, and we were all really confused. Now, he always joked during class, and it was something to be expected, but not something of this importance. These were grades he was joking about. And after a while, he told us that he was relating this to what had happened in the 1920s when the Americans had trusted the banks with their money, and, much like our projects, they just disappeared. We were all very confused, and after a few explanations, we came to realize his point, and it's something that I remember to this day because it was so traumatic to have our grades just gone. It's something that I believe Mr. Gavin truly tried to show us, that there are different ways to learn, and this was definitely one of them. Mr. Gavin's ability to relate lessons to our lives, to make us understand them better, truly set him apart as an instructor and helped us remember them when we were tested on them. Not only did this activity give us an interactive introduction to the next chapter, but it also taught us something as menial as the importance of saving documents. To this day, every time I type something out, be it a short response or a full-length paper, I make sure a couple times that I save that document in case I ever need to reproduce it again. As a senior leader, I relied on Mr. Gavin for support and experience in dealing with the freshman workroom. When I first signed up to be a senior leader, I had no idea just how challenging it would be. I thought back to my freshman year, and I realized that my senior leader class didn't really go without, didn't have much trouble, and we didn't give our senior leader much grief, but it was different in our case. And without Mr. Gavin's support, I'm confident that I would not have made it out of that semester having the friends that I made with those freshmen. And I just saw one earlier today, and she was surprised that I remembered her name, but I wasn't. The activities that we did and the relationships that we built, many thanks to Mr. Gavin, was something that have stuck with me till today, and I'm sure have influenced the lives of all those students. Now, I could go on for hours talking about Mr. Gavin and how great he was to all of us, but we have a better way to honor him, and that's by playing this tennis game in a few minutes. In short, Mr. Gavin's legacy lives on in the lives of all of us. Not only did he teach us useful information about the history of our country, but he taught us much more every day, both in and out of the classroom, in ways that he never could have known. He was more than a teacher to most of us. He was our friend, and I am honored today to have had the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Richards student body on such an amazing person. Thank you for this opportunity, and now please join me in welcoming John Sutko, Richards Senior and captain of the tennis team.
Good afternoon. I want to start off by saying I couldn't be more proud to be a part of this team. When I joined the tennis team my freshman year, I was greeted by Coach Gavin with open arms and given the opportunity to play on his varsity team. My junior year, I was able to have him as my AP US history teacher. Through both those experiences, I got to see two totally different sides of this incredible man. Very rarely in your life do you meet someone and you stop to think, wow, 30 years from now, and for the rest of my life, this man's going to impact the rest of my life. And that's exactly what he did. Through his coaching and teaching, I learned that hard work wasn't an option, it was a necessity. And how to cope with adversity and make the best with what you are given, because if there was one thing I knew about Coach, it was that he was always smiling. I want to take a minute and read a text message I sent to Coach the day before our conference match. It started off by me talking to him about a few of my matches that year and letting him know how I was doing up to the conference tournament. But in short, it ended, I've hit every shot this year with you in mind, and the team has your back and is playing for you. The desire to win this year is unbelievable. We see how hard you fight, and it motivates us to fight even harder. We're there for you, Coach, and we promise to give you every single drop of energy we have in this conference tournament. I didn't get a reply back, but the next day we went out to go play our conference match, and we had learned about the news that he passed away that morning. But we went out, and that day it was terrible weather, just the cloudy, chance of rain, and I started playing one of my introduction matches that day, and out of nowhere, this beam of light shot down from out of the clouds. Like it shouldn't have happened. It was like a force from God that there was sunshine that day. And to this day, I have a lot of trouble finding that to be a coincidence. With that being said, I'm 100% certain that everyone here still has someone watching over them. I would like to take this time to introduce the current Richards boys tennis coach, Mr. Tariq Katan.
Thanks, John, and thanks for all of you for being here. I have kind of a unique relationship with Matt, I guess, because I was not only his coworker, but I was his former student back when he was just student teaching here with Manny Montez, who was also here. I was always in and out of Manny's room, so as a result, I always saw Matt, and then eventually Matt became my Scholastic Bowl coach in his first year here. We were always very close, and he was one of actually the few teachers who impacted me enough for me to keep in touch with him into my adulthood and obviously become his coworker eventually. Just to speak about him as a teacher first, enough can't be said. What Jasmine already said, he was an amazing teacher. His door was always open for students, whether they were, the best AP student or just a struggling, student in his class. Always open and always very, always very dedicated to not only what you were doing in the classroom, but what you wanted to do later in your life and how you developed. And in fact, when I graduated from here, I later met him and Paul Fay, who was a former teacher here at UIC where I went to college. And Matt still remembered everything about me. He remembered what I was majoring in. I think he even remembered my AP score that I took on a test. And I wasn't even in his AP class, but he still remembered. And that really touched me. It doesn't seem like much now, but when you're 18, 19 years old, it's a big deal. One thing that I'll remember always about Matt, and I'm sure it's going to be reiterated, is how humorous he was, how funny, how entertaining. In fact, whenever me and Manny will make kind of a funny remark, sometimes he'll say to me, "That's a Matt Gavinism." In other words, that's something that Matt would have said, Obviously, we're here to dedicate these courts to Matt. I can't think of a better thing to dedicate to him because obviously he loves tennis, he loved the sport. He loved the team. He loved all of the kids playing for his team. And he is still very much in every way a part of the team. Every match we play, as John said, we play in his memory. We play with him on our minds. We still share stories about him. And in fact, in the month before you start the season, you do conditioning to kind of get your body in the motions. And he had a tradition of doing a workout routine called Insanity, which is a video workout routine. And so we still keep it up in his memory, and because that's something that Coach Gavin would do. I consider coaching the tennis team one of the best gifts that Coach Gavin could have ever left me, because all of his players, all the people that he influenced are little pieces of him, little pieces of his humor, of his diligence, of his respect, of his hard work, and all of his, especially the varsity players who knew him personally, represent that. And having played multiple teams, I can say that our players are some of the most respectful, some of the most dedicated, and that's not me. That's something that Matt instilled in them. So I'll close by saying that it's amazing. It's great today that we've officially etched Matt symbolically onto our courts and into this school. But on a deeper level, he's etched in each of us, his stories, the things he left us with. We all have a little bit of Matt with us, and I don't think he could have left us with a better gift. So thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
When I was asked to speak about Matt as his friend, one of the first things I thought about was, I thought it made sense to go and find someone that had a lot really in common with Matt, and they went and found, a good Irish Catholic like myself, John Chiappetto. But to be quite honest with you, it's such an honor to be able to speak today about Matt in front of his family and all of his friends, and it's truly an honor. This guy was, such an inspiration to us at all for all the 9 years that he was here every day. I bet you a lot of the friends have some of the similar stories where, we reach for our cell phones to text Matt and say, did you see that on Modern Family, or are you watching that NBA game? And, that's been one of the most difficult parts, is to not, do it. But sometimes I kind of do it anyway in my head. But again, I'm up here today as his friend, and I was looking over the program, and it says teacher and coach. And really, to be quite honest with you, Matt was all of those things for me. He was a teacher to me for so many things. He taught me how to, what Facebook was all about, and Twitter. Hawkeye Gav is his title. I won't forget that. But quite honestly, again, he was very quick to help me with anything from understanding Skyward, or how to dress, or maybe an app on his phone. So he was really my go-to guy for a lot of those things. This morning we had a curriculum meeting for our social studies department. And one of the things that always seemed to happen in our social studies meetings, if anything that was said that, that I knew Matt was thinking the same thing I was thinking, I'd always look up to him, and we'd either laugh at each other, or we'd actually send a text to each other during the meeting, which we found out today, or this year, that was pretty unprofessional to do during the meetings. So on behalf of Matt, I'd like to apologize to John McSweeney for that. But we had a lot of conversations about a lot of things. I had two cousins that went to Downers Grove South with Matt, and so that was one of our initial bonds. My two cousins, they knew him really well, so we talked about that quite often. Matt was an expert, and quite honestly, about the NBA. He was a wonderful teacher. We'd ask him different teaching methods, and we would talk about that. But there's always something that made you realize that this guy was a real professional. He was great at what he did, and at a young age, it was really impressive to watch. His classroom was right across from mine, and I watched him every day. But where really our relationship grew was at lunch. We had a nice little lunch group that included, the core of that group is definitely Megan Witt and Derek Johnson. There were others that came and went: Jim Powers, Matt Royce. There's a few other guys that I can't think of right now, but we talked about everything. We had everything covered. We solved all the world's problems at lunch, and we always miss those things. But there's definitely a legacy that he left. One is the impact that he had on us every single day here. The students, you heard what they thought about him, and that's such a tremendous honor to hear those things from Matt and his family. I'm sure to hear that. But these tennis courts are really kind of neat. You know, first of all, when I first saw the courts and I looked at them and I was like, well, where's the Richards colors? But now that I look at them very close, they're very colorful. And just like Matt, he was very colorful as a person. And he loved his family. His baby girl is just as perfect. And his family, his wife, and his sister and his parents are just wonderful people. I really, if you haven't had an opportunity to read the article today, Southtown, it's perfect. And you should read it if you get a chance. But you know, Matt used to talk about these tennis courts. There used to be these huge gaps in them, and you know, and I know he wanted new courts because they were ugly, the old ones. But honestly, he wanted them because he knew they'd be safe for his players, and it would put his players in the best position to be successful. And that's really all he was ever about is trying to, you know, make people around him better. And I know that I'm a better person for spending time with Matt here at Richards. And, you know, in my backyard, we had a real memorable moment from that night. And I'm just going to leave that to the people that were there that night. But again, he's going to live on forever, definitely with me. And I know everybody that's here today in this school was very lucky to have him. And so again, I just think it's going to happen today is just an awesome thing. And again, I thank those for letting me be a small piece of it. And I'd like to bring our principal, Mr. John Hallberg, up. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach. Before I actually read the official dedication of the courts, I've got to share two quick stories. One has to do with how these courts came about. About 5 years ago, I was fortunate enough to become the principal here at Richards. School hadn't started yet. School had not started yet, and it was August. I was walking around the campus. I had met Matt, because Matt had come in early. He was always hanging around here, so I knew who he was, and right away hit it off, and we realized he's a Hawkeye. I'm a Badger, so we went at it right away.
The speaker is too close to the mic.
And what happened from there is he came up to me and said, John, can you do me a favor? Can you walk with me out to the tennis courts, the old tennis courts? And so I walked with him, and he took me out on the courts. And in his way, he basically said, John, he goes, you know, I just wanted you to see, we're not the biggest program here at Richards. We don't have the most kids. We've got great kids who are working hard. He goes, and as you can see, these courts, you know, these aren't conducive for our kids. Never once did he use the word unsafe or anything. He just said, can you do me a favor? Can you see what you can do to help us with these courts? And I looked at it because now, you know, he had downplayed it like he does. There were posts popping up. There were gaps. There were weeds growing through. And I said, Matt, you don't have to sugarcoat it. These things could be unsafe at some point. So we need to do something. And I said, Matt, I can't make you a promise. I'm not going to make you a promise I can't keep. But I will do my best, and we'll see what we can do. Because I realized right away it was going to be more than just resurfacing. It was going to need to be torn up, and it was going to cost some money. So right then, you know, the following month, I called Dr. Byrne. I said, hey, listen, we've got, you know, one of the things we got to get on our list is the tennis courts. We put it on the list. We knew it was going to take some time. I told Matt, give us a little bit of time here. And thanks to Dr. Byrne and the Board of Education, we got the project on the books. We had the architects come out and look. It took us a few years because it was very expensive to redo and place them where we placed them. But because of Matt, if it weren't for him saying that, I know, and I guess what I'm trying to say too is the way he went about it was kind of like, hey, if you could get this done for us. He didn't come in and demand anything. It made me want to work twice as hard to get these courts done for Matt's kids, because that's who he was speaking for. So in a roundabout way, we come full circle. We finally have the courts. It took a little bit longer than I'd wanted, but thanks to Matt, we have the courts in his name. The other story I got to share with you is, as you know, he was a Hawkeye, proud Hawkeye. I'm a Badger. Now, for people who don't know, Badgers, Hawkeyes, they're farming communities in agricultural states. They do not like each other. It's a big rivalry. During the 70s and 80s, Iowa owned Wisconsin in all sports, beat the tar out of us every time we played. And I was part of that, took my beatings. We got into the 90s and started to turn a little bit.
And I was very fortunate the last 5 years, Wisconsin was getting the better of the Hawkeyes. And I would run into Matt coming in every day, and every time the Badgers would beat him, I would make sure he knew it. And I would really give it to him. And he always took it. He was such a gentleman. He always took it, always took it. Basketball, football, you name it, whatever sport, the Badgers beat the Hawkeyes, and I let him know that. And we were on a roll. Well, it was about a year and a half ago, the basketball, it was a cold winter February night, and Wisconsin was highly ranked. They went down to Iowa City and just got blasted, 88-61. And I kept thinking that night, I got to avoid Matt tomorrow because he's going to get me. I'm serious. That's how I was thinking. I just got to avoid him because he owes it to me because I've been giving it to him for a long time. Next morning, I'm driving in and I'm still in my mind, okay, just avoid Matt, stay out of that area of the building, just avoid him today. I pull in the parking lot first. He pulls up right next to me. Part of me says coincidence. Part of me says, no, that's Matt. Well, I figure I'll just play it off. So I get out of the car. Matt gets out. I didn't say a word. We start walking to the building. Hey, good morning. How you doing? Good to see you. And I'm waiting for him just to give it to me, and I'll take it, and we'll move on. Doesn't say a word. Typical Matt. Doesn't say a word. We're walking towards the building. Finally, I break down and say, hey, Matt, congratulations. You guys got us last night. He looks at me and says, what do you mean? I go, you got us last night. You didn't see the game, Badgers, Hawkeyes. It was on, it was on TV. He goes, you guys beat us pretty good. And he said, now, John, I was grading a lot of papers. I didn't even know they were playing, to be honest with you. He played, that's typical Matt, played it off. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he had me believing that he didn't. He didn't watch the game. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. So I proceeded to tell him, yeah, it was 88-61. You guys just annihilated us. And here's what he says to me. He goes, well, John, once in a while we get lucky. And he uses the old blind squirrel finds an acorn once in a while line. That's what he says to me. And then he pauses. He goes, yeah, I think we just probably got lucky, whatever. 88-61. He knew the score of the game. He had watched the game. And he just buried me with that. So we walk in the building, and I took my medicine. But I got to tell you, that whole day, I kept getting emails, 88-61. Then there was an email that went out and said something about reasons or whatever. Matt emails me, I can give you 88 reasons to do that. He just kept going. He kept going. And I guess that's the thing I think everybody knows about Matt that we loved. It was just, I'll never forget the impression he had on our kids, on our staff. Is just as remarkable. But I'll never, every time I watch a Badger Hawkeye game, I think of Matt Gavin. So, Mr. Scanlon, Mr. Royce, you want to come on up? After I officially read the dedication, we are going to take a couple pictures with the family. We'd also welcome anybody who wants to kind of walk out on the court, feel free. But we also head back into the Augs gym. We have it set up. We have some food, so please hang around, stick around as long as you want, and just enjoy being together. On behalf of Community High School District 218 at Richards High School, on this 29th day of April 2014, we officially dedicate these tennis courts in honor of our teacher, coach, mentor, and good friend, Mr. Matt Gavin. He served the students, staff, and community of Richards High School with class, dignity, and integrity, which will be forever ingrained in our Richards family. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. Thank you.